Do you have any favorite authors whose books you talk about to anyone who will listen? You've read all of their books, and may have even tried to imitate their style. Wouldn't you love it if you could converse with them and get their feedback on how you could improve your writing? In 1956, C.S. Lewis did just that for a young fan of his Chronicles of Narnia series, critiquing the fan's writing and also sharing his 5 rules for writing well. Keep watching to discover more about C.S. Lewis and his Narnia series, and how these 5 writing rules helped make his books so loved that they've sold over 120 million copies. The Man Who Created Narnia. Before we get to C.S. Lewis's writing rules, let's first look at why he is such an important writer that we can learn from. In 1950, the first book in C.S. Lewis's fantasy series, The Chronicles of Narnia, revolutionized the children's book industry. This first book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, told the story of 4 children who find a magical wardrobe that leads into the fantasy world of Narnia. There they join the true king, a majestic lion named Aslan, and battle the dark powers that want to destroy the land and its inhabitants. Lewis was a professor of English literature at Oxford and Cambridge, and his Narnia stories are a rich blend of Greek, Norse, and Arthurian myth, as well as fantasy, Christian symbolism, and philosophy. The writer, Roger Lancelyn Green, who was a member of Lewis's literary group, The Inklings, wrote an in-depth biography of his friend Lewis, co-authored with Lewis's literary secretary, Walter Hooper. In the biography, Green and Hooper observed, "In the years before The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, publishers returned the manuscripts of such books with the almost stereotyped form, 'The modern child is not interested in magic and fantasy.' From 1950 onwards came the swing of the pendulum back to fantasy and fairy tale." In Michael Coren's biography, The Man Who Created Narnia, a biography that contains wonderful photos of Lewis, Coren wrote, "Word of mouth and the unstoppable appeal of the books soon made up for any poor reviews. George Sayre, a friend of Lewis at Oxford, summed up the attraction of the Narnia stories when he wrote that his stepdaughter began to cry after she had finished reading the tales, and said, 'I don't want to go on living in this world. I want to live in Narnia with Aslan.'" This quote shows the power of Lewis's prose. He made his fantasy world come alive for his readers. With the success of the series, Lewis received countless letters from children all around the world. He was careful to respond to each one. A collection of some of these responses can be found in the slim volume, Letters to Children. Among this collection are several of his letters to Joan, a young girl who wrote to him from Florida in the United States. She sent her first letter to Lewis in 1954. They would end up exchanging over 20 letters. In one letter, Lewis outlined for Joan his 5 rules for writing well. Though the letter is now almost 70 years old, Lewis's rules are still relevant for writers today. They show us the techniques he used to write captivating descriptions that made his novels resonate with generations of readers and turned the books into timeless tales. Keep watching to discover C.S. Lewis's 5 rules and how we can use them to improve our own writing. C.S. Lewis's 5 writing rules. Number 1. Always try to use the language so as to make quite clear what you mean and make sure your sentence couldn't mean anything else. Number 2. Always prefer the plain, direct word to the long, vague one. Don't implement promises, but keep them. Number 3. Never use abstract nouns when concrete ones will do. If you mean more people died, don't say mortality rose. Number 4. In writing, don't use adjectives which merely tell us how you want us to feel about the thing you are describing. I mean, instead of telling us a thing was terrible, describe it so that we'll be terrified. Don't say it was delightful. Make us say delightful when we've read the description. You see, all those words, horrifying, wonderful, hideous, exquisite, are only like saying to your readers, "Please, will you do my job for me?" Number 5. Don't use words too big for the subject. Don't say infinitely when you mean very. Otherwise, you'll have no word left when you want to talk about something really infinite. Let's boil these rules down to make them easier to remember. Use clear language, plain direct words, concrete nouns, vivid description, and avoid any words too big for your subject. C.S. Lewis's rules in a nutshell. All 5 of these rules share an underlying principle. When you are writing, your first and foremost concern should be for your reader. C.S. Lewis wasn't writing solely for himself, but to share his writing with the world. With that in mind, when you edit your writing, you should try to imagine yourself as your reader. You, of course, know what was in your head when you wrote those lines, but how will someone interpret them who doesn't know you? Are your sentences clear and simple? Are any confusing? Could any have double meanings? Are you using so many long and obscure words that your writing sounds pretentious? Is it too difficult to read? Lewis warns us not to weigh down our sentences with too many adjectives. Show, don't tell. Let your passion come through. Make your readers feel as if they are seeing with your eyes. Here's how you can turn this into a writing exercise. Choose a final draft of a recent writing project or a draft you're currently working on. Look for places where you describe something using only adjectives like wonderful or terrible. Try to replace them with vivid description instead. Additionally, see if there are any places in your writing where you've described something with an adjective that is already understood in the noun. For example, white snow. Obviously, we all know that snow is white, so the adjective is redundant. Is there a more vivid way you could describe the snow? Perhaps with a metaphor or a simile that makes us feel as if we are seeing the snow for the first time. Or maybe the snow isn't even white anymore, but brown and muddy. Let's see how Lewis describes snow in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. In this first book in the Narnia series, the fantasy land is under a spell that makes it always winter, but never Christmas. That means the land is covered in snow. In fact, Lewis uses the word snow 63 times throughout the story. However, he describes it differently each time. Here's one passage. Something cold and soft was falling on her. A moment later, she found that she was standing in the middle of a wood, at nighttime, with snow under her feet and snowflakes falling through the air. She began to walk forward, crunch, crunch over the snow and through the wood towards the other light. Does this passage follow Lewis's 5 writing rules? Yes, he uses clear language, plain direct words, concrete nouns, vivid description, and avoids any words too big for his subject. Let's look closer at his description. Lewis uses sensory words, which is a wonderful way to make your descriptions more vivid. Sensory words are the descriptive words that apply to the 5 senses: sight or appearance, touch, taste, scent, and sound. Here, Lewis uses touch, cold and soft, as well as sound with the onomatopoeia, crunch, crunch. An onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like the sound it describes. He also uses motion. We can see the snowflakes falling through the air. Let's look at another of Lewis's passages describing snow. The reindeer were about the size of Shetland ponies, and their hair was so white that even the snow hardly looked white compared with them. Their branching horns were gilded and shone like something on fire when the sunrise caught them. Does this passage follow Lewis's 5 writing rules? Yes. Once again, he uses clear language, plain direct words, concrete nouns, vivid description, and avoids any words too big for his subject. In this passage, Lewis does use the word white, but only to contrast the color of the snow to the color of the reindeer, to make us see the scene more vividly. With your own writing, think about whether you can contrast 2 things to make the description more powerful. Lewis also uses a simile, like something on fire. Here's another snowy passage. The robin kept going from tree to tree, always a few yards ahead of them, but always so near that they could easily follow it. Wherever the robin alighted, a little shower of snow would fall off the branch. Presently the clouds parted overhead, and the winter's sun came out, and the snow all around them grew dazzlingly bright. Does this description follow Lewis's 5 writing rules? Yes. Once again, he uses clear language, plain direct words, concrete nouns, vivid description, and avoids any words too big for his subject. In this passage, Lewis describes the snow again through motion. We can see it falling off the branch as the bird alights, and the clouds move to allow the sun to come out and shine upon the snow. You'll see that Lewis doesn't use a lot of adverbs in his writing, so when he does, here with dazzlingly, it's well placed and creates an impactful image. Here's a final passage. And his heart gave a great leap, though he hardly knew why, when he realized that the frost was over. And much nearer there was a drip, drip, drip from the branches of all the trees. And then, as he looked at one tree, he saw a great load of snow slide off it, and for the first time since he had entered Narnia, he saw the dark green of a fir tree. Now the snow was really melting in earnest, and patches of green grass were beginning to appear in every direction. Unless you have looked at a world of snow as long as Edmund had been looking at it, you will hardly be able to imagine what a relief those green patches were after the endless white. Every moment more and more of the trees shook off their robes of snow. Does this passage follow Lewis's 5 writing rules? Yes. Once more, he uses clear language, plain direct words, concrete nouns, vivid description, and avoids any words too big for his subject. Let's look at the techniques he uses for vivid description. We see onomatopoeia again with the drip, drip, drip of the melting snow. He also describes the snow through motion with a great load of snow sliding off the trees. We see contrast with the green of the fir trees against the endless white. Again, one of the few places Lewis describes the snow as white, and only because he is contrasting it against another color. And we also see a metaphor here. Robes of snow. Ultimately, like any writing rules, there are always exceptions depending on a writer's voice and style and what the writer is describing. But overall, Lewis's 5 writing rules are an excellent guide to make sure you write in a way that your readers can see the colors, taste the foods, feel the atmosphere of a room they have never stepped foot in before, and smell the rich and varied scents of the new worlds and experiences you share with them. C.S. Lewis on what it means to be a writer. Of course, all of that is easier said than done, and Lewis understood this. At the beginning of this letter to Joan, C.S. Lewis critiqued a piece of her writing and observed, "You describe your wonderful night very well. That is, you describe the place and the people and the night and the feeling of it all very well, but not the thing itself, the setting, but not the jewel. And no wonder. Wordsworth often does just the same. His Prelude, you're bound to read it about 10 years hence, don't try it now, or you'll only spoil it for later reading, is full of moments in which everything except the thing itself is described. If you become a writer, you'll be trying to describe the thing all your life, and lucky if, out of dozens of books, 1 or 2 sentences, just for a moment, come near to getting it across." Lewis was telling Joan that writing is not a craft we can master in a matter of hours or days. It takes years and years and perhaps can never be mastered at all. But we can become better writers. We can improve day by day if we are willing to keep on practicing and putting in the hard work and following Lewis's 5 writing rules. Writing is not something to be rushed through. It requires careful thought and reflection. It requires us to transpose the muddle of our thoughts onto paper and rearrange those thoughts in such a way that they can entertain and inspire our readers. It can be a frustrating business, but in the end, it is all worthwhile because we have the power to make the world a better place through our writing. As C.S. Lewis is said to have once observed, literature adds to reality. It does not simply describe it. It enriches the necessary competencies that daily life requires and provides, and in this respect, it irrigates the deserts that our lives have already become. Final thoughts. Not all of us are lucky enough to have the opportunity Joan did to correspond with a favorite author. And of course, there's always the possibility that your favorite author wouldn't feel up to critiquing your work. In C.S. Lewis's fascinating essay on 3 ways of writing for children, he made clear that he did not like giving advice on writing. "I would rather learn about the art than set up to teach it," he wrote. After all, there is always more we can learn, always more time to spend practicing. So let's learn from the great authors who went before us, carefully studying their writing and always looking for ways that we can improve our own, so that one day we can create something truly beautiful, something that will truly touch the hearts of our readers. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. And also be sure to sign up to my email newsletter for more writing resources and inspiration. God bless, and I wish you all the best with your writing projects.